Matt Thomas here. I am with Rex Reedy. He's a friend of mine. He's a past client of mine. As you can see, he is a farmer insurance agent. And I thought it would be valuable to talk to him and interview him and see if he can maybe answer some questions maybe that you're having. But ultimately, as you know, we at the Altitude Group, look to help you with your home buying, and building assets through real estate and that kind of thing. We want to make sure that you have all the protection that you need and you're well insured and you understand, what's available to you to make sure that your assets are protected. So I wanted to introduce Rex, and Rex, nice to have you with us.
Thank you, Matt. I appreciate you having us online, and we're happy to be here.
Cool. I wanted to, so I met you several years ago. I'm trying to remember now exactly how long ago it was, but when you were not an insurance agent, you were actually at Jump Street, I think. Is that right?
That's correct.
I was an executive with Jump Street.
That's correct. I used to be the VP of operations for Jump Street. Used to, very obviously insurance related with handling some of the, vendor relationships and some of our, vendor contracts and things like that.
Okay.
Correct.
Yeah. And I would imagine you probably saw lots of insurance claims when you were working in that industry.
Yes, absolutely.
And whatnot.
We saw a number of claims come through our facilities, and like I said, that's where my my insurance experience and where my desire to move over to the insurance came from, was because a lot of that was to protect our facilities.
Sure. So that's an interesting background. And now when you got into insurance, I as I understand, you bought somebody's business. You kind of took over for somebody. Is that right?
Correct. About 4 years ago.
Okay. Yeah. Good. And do you have a specific expertise or an area that you serve, or what would you say?
We specialize in home insurance, and obviously a variety of the personal lines insurance, as well as life and commercial. And that's where we try to focus our time.
Perfect. Good. Sure. Well, that'll be great for our homeowners to know. So when you let's see. I mean, tell us. Is there anything you'd like to tell us about, what you do in particular? I mean, obviously you're an insurance agent, and I'm sure people have their impression of what you do, but maybe are there some myths or anything that you'd like to dispel, or things that you'd like to share with people as we get going here?
Yeah, I mean, obviously with insurance, I believe, replacement value is something that is, or I guess just related to insurance. I believe a lot of people think that insurance covers everything, and that a lot of times you're trying to satisfy or kind of check the box with insurance, and a lot of times you're qualifying for a loan and things like that, and so you kind of need to check the box. But I think obviously a good agent will be able to kind of go through a policy and be able to kind of confirm that you have replacement value, and confirm that you have the value and the protections that you need, and also be able to tell you what insurance covers and what it's meant to be used for, and what it's not meant to be used for.
Okay. So what would you say that the most common claims are that you typically see come through over your desk?
Yeah, obviously living in Colorado, the majority of our claims coming through our office is wind and hail. So it's I would say that's 95% of them. We have quite a few, water line bursts. We've got service line burst, mold, things like that. Those are the probably top 3 or 4 that we see come through our office.
So do you cover mold as an issue, or is that usually related to a pipe burst or something like that, or?
Not always, but mold is something that comes up often, and one thing that's that we try to confirm that it's added onto someone's policy. It's not necessarily always something that's added on. There's a variety of coverages that are come with a main policy, and some things that you want to make certain that you do have. You want to make certain that you have mold. You want to make certain that you have sewer backup, service line. If you want some additional rider coverages, glass and things like that without deductible, we've got great options on that as well. Okay.
So when somebody buys a homeowner insurance policy, do they not necessarily have all those things? It sounds like probably a lot of people think they have one coverage, but they don't necessarily, right? And that obviously can be pretty shocking when it comes around to having a claim. So if they're not covered for mold, or if they're not covered for You said glass, like, are you talking about like windows and stuff like that? Or?
Typically glass would be covered, but again, we've got some special glass coverages that would come without having to pay without having to pay a deductible for that.
Okay.
But typically glass is covered. A mold would not necessarily be covered, and it's something that you'd want to ask about. Again, likewise with that sewer and backup, service line, which is, where someone sells a house or buys a home, you have to have that service line inspected and looked at.
Yeah.
That's not, we see people have to have their front yards, dug up and have that service line out to the street replaced.
Yeah.
So some of those coverages don't always come with the policy directly. So
Okay.
primarily, obviously insurance is meant to cover that catastrophic claim, that sudden loss that does occur within a house. But like I said, there are some additional coverages, like I said, such as the service line and that mold and that water backup that we want to make certain are added.
Yeah. Okay. So when people give you a call and they're interviewing you and they're asking you about certain coverages, what are the questions that they should be asking you? Because I think there's maybe there's just an assumption, maybe it's just in my head, but it seems like there might be an assumption that, like, oh, I'm getting homeowners insurance and it covers all these things. And again, it's not until you have a loss that you actually find out, oh man, I may not be covered for that. So what should people be asking you, and how do you consult them when they call?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. We try to focus on, homeowners insurance does obviously cover the home, and that's what it's intended to be. I think sometimes people might think that it's a maintenance policy or something that's going to cover, appliances and water heaters and things like that. And there are policies that are out there for that. The insurance obviously is meant for that sudden loss, that sudden, catastrophic type loss. So what we try to focus on is ensuring that clients have, replacement coverage. So a pretty bare bones kind of basic policy can come with what they call ACV, or a depreciated value on your home, because we want to make certain that your home value is covered at a replacement value. And so those are types of questions and things that we try to focus on is having that. We don't want to make the replacement of your home be something that you only replace part of it back because you have a depreciated value or an ACV value. We want to make certain that you have that. And then we also want to take a peek at, obviously, deductibles. Everybody has a out-of-pocket, propensity to be able to accept, lower and higher deductibles. And we want to make certain that fits your needs.
Okay.
As well as obviously coverages is extremely important. So we go through every one of the coverages and make certain that it fits your needs. And some things fit, some things, don't necessarily apply. And we can look at those. Okay.
When people call in and they're asking you about things like, the things that we just mentioned, like the sewer, the mold, and things like that, you mentioned that those are riders. Like, are you having to put those riders on top? Is that something that they need to be aware of asking about to make sure that they're covered on all bases?
Yes, absolutely. Like I said, the mold is a coverage that's not typically included in a policy. So you want to make certain that you're, asking that question: am I covered for mold? Do I have replacement value? Am I covered for a service line, break? Am I covered for, water, sewer backup coverage? Obviously, these things can be, quite messy, and they're not necessarily included in the primary policy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So those are, I think, some good things to be aware of. Then when people call in, they should be asking about those things. You mentioned hail. So is hail one of those things that's covered in a kind of a primary policy, or just a general policy?
Yes, hail is, again, the primary claim that we see in Colorado, and insurance is meant to cover fire, it's meant to cover hail, and again, it's all based on whether it's going to be covered at that ACV depreciated value or it's going to be covered at replacement. But hail is absolutely something that's covered. And with that said, there's roofs and things like that. There's class 4 and class 5 roofs that will qualify for some additional discounts. Okay. And they're a little more impact resistant. Yeah. And some of those things do help on premium as well.
Okay. I know when my mom moved from she moved from Colorado down to Utah, southern Utah, and she said that her homeowner's policy was like a couple $100 a year. I'm like, how's that even possible? Like, that's a lot of times what people pay per month. And, we obviously deduce that, like, they're not replacing roofs. So, I see it so often. When we're selling a home for somebody, and, we say, the buyer's going to ask about your roof, they're going to get it checked out. And every once in a while we have, to replace or, have somebody have their roof replaced during their transaction. And a lot of times people will miss a window of like, oh, I think I'll just get this done whenever. A lot of times when they have a big hailstorm move through an area, homeowners get swamped or bombarded with, roofers knocking at the door saying we need to replace, and I think that's off-putting for a lot of people. But it's important when you have a hail event or something like that to check with your insurance agent, right? Would you say, because you want to make sure that, isn't there a window where you can get a claim filed? Because I think a lot, sometimes we'll see a situation where somebody's like, yeah, we had a hailstorm 3, 4, 5 years ago, and everybody in the neighborhood got theirs done, but I didn't get mine done. I didn't think it was that bad. And maybe their roof didn't leak, but they ended up with a situation where now they're going, they're trying to sell their house and they're not able to get their roof replaced or at a lesser cost because they didn't get it done within the window of, when they should have, filed the claim. How does that work?
Yeah, that's correct. You have 12 months from the time of a loss to have that claim filed, and so that could be at the very end of that 12 months, but you can file within that time, and then you can go, but 12 months is kind of that backdating window of time that you have to kind of make that and file that claim.
Okay, 12 months. So if you have a hail issue or a hail event move through the neighborhood, as much as you might not like to talk to an insurance agent, or you definitely don't want to get bombarded by these questions from the roofing contractors knocking at the doors, you do need to get that filed and that claim filed and taken care of within that year, or you might miss out. And again, nobody necessarily thinks, well, in 5 years I'm moving, but if that time comes for you and now you haven't taken care of your roof replacement or your roof damage repairs or whatever through insurance, you may have missed that window. And in Colorado, probably in a lot of places, they're very used to having to save extra money over time to replace their roof. They go 20 years and they're going to probably have to replace their roof. In Colorado, you could go 20 hours between hailstorms, and you could end up with I've heard situations where people were literally getting their roof replaced, and because it's May and it's just hailing a bunch, they have new shingles up on the roof that are waiting to get installed, and those get bombarded with hail, and they're back to like replacing the new shingles that haven't even gone on their roof yet. So hail comes frequently around here, obviously. But again, when you find that yourself in a situation where you're like, man, I should get insurance to take care of this, and you've missed your window to do that, now you're out of pocket replacing an entire roof. And as we all know, prices have gone up on just about everything, especially with materials and certainly labor as well in the last couple of years with inflation and whatnot. And so it's super important to get that done, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we encourage everybody to not wait and to contact your agent. We obviously have access to a lot of resources, but contact your agent, and we don't necessarily want to, file several claims or be too quick to file a claim. But that's why you contact your agent, see it, because they'll have resources. They'll be able to send a roofer out. They'll be able to send a plumber out or a concrete person to go out and take a peek at the house, see if it's something that needs a claim filed or not. And and that's what's nice about a good agent, is they'll be able to step in and be able to have somebody come out, take a peek, and see if it's something that warrants filing a claim. Obviously, in Colorado, if you file too many claims in a short window of time, 3 years to be exact, you jeopardize yourself against being non-renewed. With that said, a claim, if you have a catastrophic loss, clearly we encourage you to take care of those, and those things come up. Sure. But again, we've got resources, and we've got people that can go out and take a look, and we have several potential claims that turn into nothing or turn into a pretty small price to pay to have it fixed at the homeowner's expense versus filing that claim. Yeah. And so yeah.
So now when maybe there's a distinction to make, like when people call you, they can call you and talk to you and say, do I have a claim? It's not actually the same as making a claim, right?
Correct.
So they can check with you before it's almost like a lot of people, when they get their credit checked or pulled for buying like a home or something like that, some people say, well, I want to talk to somebody, but I don't want them to pull my credit. Like, well, they don't have to pull your credit, but you can have a conversation with a professional. So somebody could call you as their agent and say, Rex, we have, I have these concerns about, something that just happened, maybe a hail event, but they can decide with you whether or not it makes sense to file a claim. Is that right?
That's right. Again, you want to,
not the same as making a claim.
Correct. Again, you'll want to call your agent and specifically request to have something looked at. I mean, if there's a, by natural logic and reasoning dictated as an event that's occurred that would require a claim, you've got a pipe just pouring water down into your basement. Clearly,
Yeah.
like we need to address that. But yes, if it's something that's in control or something that by natural reason doesn't dictate that claim, call your agent, ask some questions, see if they've got some resources or somebody that can come out and take a peek at it before filing that claim.
Okay, that makes sense.
And to that end, I mean, obviously there are oftentimes claims will come out, they'll take a peek at something that's going on, and it still does hit your claim status even if nothing's paid out. So even if it's they turn around with hey, this is going to cost $1,000 to fix, well, you're not necessarily going to file a claim. There's going to be a zero claim payout. It's still going to kind of show as a claim being submitted. So again, I just encourage you that you call your agent and have a discussion with him and have someone come out and take a look.
Gotcha. Okay, makes sense. We covered hail. Obviously, we talked a little bit about sewer. A popular subject lately. Not a popular, but unfortunately, it's been a common subject that people have discussed lately is fire. I've lived in this area my whole life, and never did I think that a grass fire would turn into burning 1,000 houses down. We think of forest fires maybe doing something like that, where the fuel is so much more. But we obviously saw what happened in Boulder County and Louisville and Lafayette and Superior, and it's absolutely terrible. But nobody thinks your house is going to burn down, especially in an entire neighborhood. And when you travel through there, you go, gosh, it's just hard to believe. Neighborhoods that I'm very familiar with, I drive through there and there's nothing but a chimney, that's standing anymore, and it's heartbreaking. But fire is one of those things that people need to make sure that they're properly insured for as well, right?
Yeah, that's correct. And again, that's the primary reason, and oftentimes people hear home policies as being fire policies. So that's where it's absolutely something that's covered in your policy. Again, whether it's at that replacement or that depreciated value, always something that we want to look at. And then, beyond that, we want to make certain that home rebuild value is right.
Okay.
And and the onus of that responsibility with your agent to help guide you still does, the onus of that responsibility still falls on the homeowner. And so it's a good question. Ask your agent and make certain that your home value, valuation is accurate for your area.
So that's interesting. And that's where, I think obviously, it would make sense for us to team up on things like this, because people would probably be talking to you about, well, I've got my home insured for whatever. And then the way that values have gone up so much, they might find that in a short amount of time, maybe a season or something like that, they're already underinsured potentially. So how often do people need to be having those conversations with you?
I would recommend every year taking a look at your home insurance policy, making certain that the valuation is correct, especially when we live in such a volatile market as Colorado, where we're seeing some real ups and downs with our valuation. The cost, as probably better than me, the cost to rebuild some of these homes is gone way up with materials. Anybody who's good at their job as far as building homes is able to charge a mint, and they're needed and desired, and they're in high demand right now, and that's causing the replacement values to go up and down similarly.
Okay, so some good advice there then, that people need to be checking in with you once a year and have you just sit down with you and do a consultation.
Right, correct.
Okay, very good. What are some what are some of the myths maybe that you think people have about what you do or the way that they're insured? Maybe are there any myths that need to be dispelled while you have the opportunity?
Yeah, I think I might have covered a little bit of that already, but I believe that sometimes people believe that home insurance covers everything, and so I think that just making certain that that you have coverage for what's important, making sure that you have replacement value, that you have that service line, that water backup. I believe sometimes people believe that groundwater or flooding is covered in an insurance policy. That's not. Most people in Colorado don't have a high propensity for or high risk area, they don't have a high risk home for flood, but nonetheless, everybody has a little bit of risk, and there might be an opportunity there for you to have a flood insurance policy to make certain that you're covered. But groundwater or flood water is not necessarily covered in your home policy.
Okay. Do you offer flood insurance?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think people have this misunderstanding that, you have to live in a river valley or something like that. And as we saw in 2013, it's a little fresh in our minds still, I think, about 9 years ago. We had a 500-year flood, and and the interesting thing about that is, there were creeks that overflowed, there were rivers that overflowed, and certainly the ones that were in close proximity got hurt. But what people don't think of is sometimes when it rains so much like that, and again, it doesn't happen very often, but it could, where it might just overflow your gutters, and your gutters can no longer, in the downspouts, they're being outworked, and now all of a sudden the rain starts going into your window wells and filling that up, and now all of a sudden you've got a flood. Correct. So you may be 10 miles from the closest river. We don't have a lot of rivers in the area, and certainly not the mighty Mississippi or anything like that, but we certainly can get localized flooding for sure. And a lot of people, because I'm in people's basements and people's homes all the time, we see it all the time. People talk about 2013 and what happened with the flooding there, and and people worry about that being a thing, and you just before that had happened, gosh, I mean, nobody thought that would even could happen, so
right. Yeah. And every home has a geographic rating based on what risk level they're in, and oftentimes that's a really, really low risk, but nonetheless, when you have those 100-year or 500-year storms, that risk is still there. So I think some people think, I'm in the lowest risk rating, there's really no need for me to have that. Definitely something that you should at least know that it's to have handy so that you can make that consideration if that's something that you need to purchase.
I would imagine that as people are seeking insurance, obviously people probably make several calls and they look for different policies, and they're shopping, and they see a Geico commercial or whatever, and and so they're just trying to look for the lowest the lowest policy or whatever. And I assume that to really be able to evaluate that, you'd have to have an apples to apples comparison, because a lot of times when people are shopping for insurance, would you say that it's an apples and oranges comparison? A lot of times people are going, this sounds really cheap, but they're not getting the coverage that that they might really need. And so people will skimp on the coverages that they're, you mentioned several different things that, with these assumptions where people think they're insured and they're not. And I assume that that's partly just because they want to save money, or they misunderstand that they think that they're insured in a certain way, which they aren't.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's factors, like I mentioned earlier, such as replacement value. There's factors as being underinsured as far as the valuation of your home, and sometimes that valuation is far too low, and so it absolutely can be apples and oranges. And so that's why it's important to compare, one proposal, to another to make certain that you are covered. And then there's also obviously deductibles. Many carriers are now going to a minimum like 1% or 2% deductible, and so on a $600,000 home, a 2% deductible is a $12,000. It's a 2% on the dwelling value, which is a $12,000 deductible, and that might be more difficult for people to come out of pocket with.
One of the things that I wanted to ask you about as well would be related to solar. I've had several people. They get ready to sell their house, and they say, I've got these solar panels. First question I'm asking them is, do you rent or do you own, or do you rent or do you do you lease them, or do you own them? And when they own them, I'm usually relieved because it makes the transfer of sale quite a bit easier. But one of the things that comes with that is that you've got to pay to maintain them, and so they should be insured. Well, they may have that coverage through like a Farmers or something like that. They may have the installers or the company who maintains the solar maybe pays for that. But what I don't think a lot of people understand is we're seeing there are companies that specialize in removing solar when you have a hail event, and they have to, apparently you have to be certified because there's some electrical connections and different things that have to be done. And there are companies that specialize in removing solar and then reinstalling them after a roof is done. So it's not just the roofers that get to, they don't just get up there and unbolt things and pitch them off the roof and and put them back on when they're all done. There's companies that do that. So even if they're, if you're leasing solar, there's still additional cost that has to be accounted for when it comes to insurance, right? Because if you have those panels removed, I've seen where it costs $6,000 to $8,000 just to have them uninstalled and then reinstalled. And I don't think people account for that when they're getting their roofs replaced, or they're thinking like, well, yeah. So anyway, can you speak to that?
Yeah, your solar panels are covered at their, under your separate coverage or separate structures coverage within a policy. But absolutely, I mean, we definitely want to make note of them being on the home, so that way we can cover that cost of having to remove them and put them back on properly. And that's something that, and it's all per panel, but definitely something that we want to have noted on a policy to make certain that that cost is covered. And not only the cost to remove them, but the cost to replace them.
Okay.
And if there's good reason that you're already covered on the replacement on the actual property itself or the panels themselves, again, we'll want to make certain that you're covered to have them removed and put back on properly before and after a roof replacement.
Yeah, it's a good point. I've seen somebody have that where they were like, man, this is how much I got for my claim to replace my roof, and they were not counting on how much it was going to cost to remove and reinstall the panels. And so they were, they had to come out of pocket a little bit on that. And nobody explained that to them when they bought their solar panels or when they leased them or whatever. So that's a good point that people need to know. If you've got solar, make sure that you are aware of that, either to insure those panels or to make sure that if they're not maintained by you, that you're at least aware, because they've got to be taken off and put back on. And there's a significant cost for that during a roof replacement.
That's correct.
Well, very good. Are there any other special or unique services or coverages that you guys provide that you want to cover at all? Anything that comes to mind, or things that you think people should be aware of?
No, I think we probably covered a lot of them. Like I said, make certain that replacement coverage on there, make certain that service line coverage is on there. We have the glass coverage with no deductible. We've got a plumbing coverage that doesn't have a deductible. It covers up to $1,000, plumbing repair. But no, I think that I covered it.
Okay, good. And are there any things that you think can think of? Is it just do the people just need to have a consultation with you to figure out how they might be able to, if they're either underinsured or if they can maybe save some money? Or do you have any advice on that, or would you say just give you a call and sit down and go through it policy by policy?
Yeah, we could absolutely go through a policy, and we can pretty quickly, we've got access to valuation tools to be able to see the valuation of your home and what it would cost to rebuild it. And obviously one of the big things in Colorado is that valuation to rebuild being higher than what it used to be, but it's also, it's not market value. So as much as our home sale values have gone way up, that's not what it would cost to replace that structure. And so we can hone in on that value to replace the home. Something does happen, and obviously then you can take a peek and see if that meets your need, or if you're underinsured, or if you need to address that.
Cool. Well, Rex, I really appreciate your time. The reason I'm doing this is because I know that you're good people, and I know you take really good care of people. And so what I'd love for people to do is, if they have questions or if they have insurance needs, to consider giving you a call, and and hopefully you can answer some questions for them, and maybe even help them out with policy. Your office is where? Are you in Arvada?
We're in Arvada, right at 88th and Wadsworth.
88th and Wadsworth, perfect. But you can obviously insure anyone anywhere in Colorado, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, we insure homes in mountain towns, all in the Denver metro area.
Okay. Very good. And how do people find you then? You've got obviously contact information, but what's the best way for people to reach out to you? What's the best method?
I think the best is our phone number.
Okay.
Call in at 303-898-2896, and that's the best way to get a hold of us. And be happy to just bounce off insurance-related ideas, or if you have questions, or if you want to look at something, we're happy to do that as well.
Awesome. Okay, we'll make sure that we have your contact information included in the video. I will also, I'm always a resource for anybody that wants to reach out to me and say, hey, saw your video with Rex. Yeah, how do I get in touch with him? Again, we'll have that as part of the video, but we'll make sure that people are able to do that. So
Great.
Very good. Well, Rex, I really appreciate your time.
Matt, I appreciate you meeting with me. Thank you.
Sounds good. All right. Hey, take care.
Take care.
We'll see you.